Good evening, my dear listeners. I hope you're all doing well today. You know, I often imagine these conversations in a very simple way. I don't imagine a microphone. I don't imagine thousands of listeners. I simply imagine two friends. One of them is talking, and the other is quietly listening. No hurry, no distractions, just two people sharing a story. And tonight, I would like to share one that stayed with me for a long time. Before we begin, I would like you to imagine something. Imagine you're leaving your house tomorrow morning. Before you step outside, someone hands you a small backpack. It's not very heavy. Inside it, there is just one small stone. You put it on your shoulders, you hardly notice it. The next day, another stone is added, then another. Every single day, someone quietly slips another stone into your bag. You never stop to empty it. You simply keep walking. Weeks pass, months pass, years pass. Now the backpack has become heavy. Your shoulders hurt. Your back feels tired. But here's the strange part: you have carried it for so long that you no longer question its weight. You simply believe this is what life feels like. I think many of us are carrying a backpack just like that. Only our backpack is not filled with stones, it's filled with memories. Words someone said years ago, a friendship that ended badly, an apology we never received, an apology we never gave, a mistake we made when we were 20, a dream that never came true, the guilt of disappointing someone, the regret of not saying something when we had the chance. Little by little, without realizing it, we keep adding weight. There is an English expression I really love: to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders. It means to carry too many worries, too many responsibilities, too many emotional burdens. And honestly, haven't we all felt that way at some point? Sometimes we smile, we go to work, we laugh with friends, we celebrate birthdays, but somewhere deep inside, we are still carrying something that happened years ago, something we have never really put down. You know? What surprises me is not that people get hurt. That's part of being human. What surprises me is how long we are willing to carry that hurt. Sometimes for 5 years, sometimes for 10, sometimes for an entire lifetime. And the strange thing is, the other person may have already moved on, but we are still living inside that old conversation, still replaying it, still thinking, I should have said this, he shouldn't have said that, if only things had happened differently. There is another phrase we often hear: time heals everything. I don't know if I completely agree. I think time gives us opportunities to heal, but healing itself is a choice. Because you can carry anger for 20 years, or you can put it down today. The clock doesn't decide, we do. Today's story is about a man named Nikhil. Now, if you saw Nikhil on an ordinary Tuesday morning, you probably would not notice anything unusual. He was 42 years old, worked as a branch manager in a bank, lived in Pune with his wife Anjali and their 12-year-old daughter Tara. He paid his bills on time, he smiled at neighbors, he attended family weddings, he laughed at office jokes. From the outside, his life looked perfectly ordinary, the kind of life thousands of people live every day. And maybe that's why nobody noticed what he had been carrying for the last 9 years. Every morning, his alarm rang at exactly 6:15. Not 6, not 6:30, 6:15. He was one of those people who liked routines. Wake up, brush his teeth, make tea before anyone else woke up, stand quietly on the balcony for 10 minutes, read the newspaper, then get ready for work. His wife often laughed and said, I think if someone changed your routine by just 5 minutes, you would notice. Nikhil would smile. I probably would. He liked order, he liked predictability. Life made sense when everything happened on time. Every Sunday, he visited his mother. She still lived in the old family house, the same house where he and his younger brother had grown up, the same house where they had played cricket in the courtyard, the same house where their father had planted a mango tree almost 30 years earlier. Whenever Nikhil entered the gate, he automatically looked toward that tree. It had grown much taller now, almost as if time had forgotten to stop for it. His mother always welcomed him with the same sentence: You've become thinner. He laughed every single time. No, Ma, you say that every Sunday, and every Sunday it's true. They both laughed. Some conversations never change. Maybe that's why they feel like home. His mother would bring out hot tea, fresh pakoras if it was raining, poha if it was a sunny morning. They talked about small things: electricity bills, neighbors, his daughter's school, the rising price of vegetables, ordinary conversations, comfortable conversations. But there was one topic that neither of them ever mentioned. Not because they had forgotten, because they both knew it still hurt. His younger brother, Aman. 9 years, 9 long years, that's how long it had been since the brothers had spoken to each other. Not a phone call, not a message, not even a birthday wish, nothing. And the strange part, if you asked Nikhil how it all started, he would probably struggle to explain it. Because sometimes relationships don't break because of one big event, they break because of small moments that quietly pile up until one day they become too heavy to carry. People in the family often asked, "So, have you spoken to Aman recently?" Nikhil would simply shake his head, "No." They stopped asking after a while, not because they didn't care, because they were tired of hoping. One evening, his daughter Tara looked at an old photo album. "Dad, who is this?" Nikhil looked over. The photograph showed two boys covered in mud. One of them was laughing so hard that his eyes had almost disappeared. The other had his arm around him. Nikhil smiled without realizing it. "That's me. And this? That's your uncle Aman." Tara looked surprised. "I've never met him." The smile slowly disappeared from Nikhil's face. "No, you haven't." She looked at him with the innocent curiosity only children have. "Why?" Nikhil opened his mouth, then closed it again. He searched for an answer, a simple answer, but somehow he couldn't find one. Because how do you explain 9 years of silence to a 12-year-old child? That night, long after everyone had gone to bed, Nikhil opened the old photo album again. He slowly turned the pages: birthday parties, school uniforms, family picnics, Diwali celebrations, two brothers, always together, always smiling. He gently ran his fingers across one old photograph. And for the first time in many years, he quietly whispered a name he hadn't spoken aloud in almost a decade: Aman. Then he closed the album, switched off the light, and convinced himself that some things are simply too broken to fix. He had no idea that life was about to prove him wrong. That night, Nikhil couldn't sleep. It wasn't because he had too much work. It wasn't because something had gone wrong at the bank. His mind kept going back to one simple question: why? A question asked by a 12-year-old. "Dad, why have I never met Uncle Aman?" Children have a strange gift, don't they? They ask questions without realizing how deeply those questions can touch us. Nikhil turned from one side of the bed to the other. Outside, the city had gone quiet. Only the occasional sound of passing vehicle broke the silence. Beside him, Anjali was already asleep. He looked at the ceiling, and for the first time in years, he allowed himself to think about Aman. Not with anger, not with pride, just with memory. You know, memory is an interesting thing. It rarely arrives in order. It doesn't knock on the door and say, "Let's start from the beginning." No, it arrives in little pieces: a smell, a song, an old photograph, the sound of someone's laughter, and suddenly you're standing in a moment you thought you had forgotten. Nikhil closed his eyes, and there they were, two little boys running barefoot in the courtyard. One was 10 and the other was 6. The younger one kept falling behind. Those were simple days. There was not much money, the house was small, summer afternoons were unbearably hot, power cuts were common. Sometimes the electricity disappeared for hours. The brothers would spread a mat on the terrace at night. Their mother would fan them with an old newspaper. Their father would point toward the sky. "See that? That's the North Star." Aman would ask 100 questions. "Why doesn't it move? How far is it? Can people touch stars?" Their father always answered patiently, even when he didn't know the answer. Nikhil smiled. He hadn't thought about those nights in years. Funny, isn't it? When we remember someone after a long time, our mind doesn't first remember the argument. It remembers the laughter, the little things, the ordinary moments. The next Sunday, as usual, he visited his mother. His mother suddenly said, "I met Aman yesterday." Nikhil's hands stopped moving just for a second. Then he continued shelling the peas. "Oh, he asked about Tara." Nikhil nodded. "Did he?" "Yes." Another silence. His mother sighed softly. "You know, both of you have become experts." "Experts?" "At pretending the other person doesn't exist." Nikhil didn't respond. Instead, he picked up another handful of peas. Sometimes keeping your hands busy is easier than answering difficult questions. His mother looked at him for a long moment, then she smiled sadly. When you were children, I couldn't make you stay away from each other. You fought every day, you argued over toys, you complained that he stole your cricket bat, you chased each other around the house, but every evening you were friends again. She laughed quietly. I used to think one day they'll grow up and they'll stop fighting. She looked toward the mango tree. I never imagined they would stop talking. Nikhil lowered his eyes. It's not that simple, I know, she nodded. It never is. But tell me honestly, when was the last time you remembered what the fight was actually about? Nikhil frowned. I remember. Do you? She asked gently. Or do you only remember that you are supposed to be angry? The question hung in the air like a leaf refusing to fall. You know, there is a saying that I think about often: time flies. People use it casually. The children have grown up so fast. Where did the years go? But I think time doesn't just fly. Sometimes it quietly carries away the details. We remember the pain, but we forget the reason, and somehow we still keep carrying the pain. Nikhil stood there for a long moment, looking at the old mango tree. The tree had seen everything: the laughter, the cricket matches, the birthdays, the arguments, and now the silence. He took one last look at the house before getting into his car. For some reason, it felt different that day, almost as if the house itself was tired of waiting. 3 days later, Nikhil was sitting in his office when his phone rang. It was his mother. She rarely called during office hours. He answered immediately. Ma? Her voice was shaking. Nikhil, I've been admitted to the hospital. My blood pressure suddenly dropped. For now, everything is under control, but the doctor wants to keep me here for observation. I didn't want you to worry, but I thought you should know. I'll be there in 20 minutes. He didn't wait for another word. He picked up his car keys and hurried out. Hospitals have a strange atmosphere. People speak softly, even footsteps seem quieter. Everyone is waiting for something: good news, bad news, or simply hope. Nikhil reached the hospital and almost ran toward the reception desk. After completing a few formalities, he walked quickly down the corridor. Then he stopped. About 20 feet away stood a man he hadn't seen in 9 years. His hair had turned gray. His shoulders looked a little broader. There were a few lines on his face that had not been there before. But Nikhil recognized him immediately. Aman, his younger brother. The two brothers looked at each other. Neither smiled, neither walked forward, neither turned away. 9 years of silence stood quietly between them. Sometimes silence says more than words ever can. There they were, two brothers standing in the same corridor, both worried about the same person, yet neither knew how to begin. Should they shake hands? Should they pretend nothing happened? Should they apologize? Or should they simply continue standing there, like strangers waiting for different patients? An elderly ward attendant slowly walked past them. He had probably worked in that hospital for decades. He looked at the two brothers, then looked toward their mother's room. He smiled gently. You know, I've worked in this hospital for nearly 30 years. I've seen thousands of families. He adjusted the bedsheet he was carrying, then quietly said, Do you know what people leave behind in hospitals? Both brothers looked at him. He smiled. Regrets. Then he continued walking. Just one word, nothing more. That night, neither brother slept. Nikhil sat outside the hospital room, staring at the vending machine across the corridor. He kept hearing the old man's voice: regret. Then he thought about something his father used to say: Life is shorter than our ego likes to believe. He had laughed when his father first said that. Tonight, it didn't sound funny anymore. The next morning, their mother finally opened her eyes. She looked weak, but she smiled. She saw Nikhil standing on one side, Aman on the other. For a few seconds, she looked from one son to the other. Then, very quietly, she said, I used to pray that one day I would see both of you standing together again. Tears rolled down her cheeks. I just didn't imagine it would be in a hospital. The room became silent. Nikhil looked down. Aman looked out of the window. Neither of them could hold back their tears. A few minutes later, Aman quietly walked out into the corridor. He leaned against the wall. Nikhil followed him. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Nikhil took a deep breath and said the simplest sentence he had spoken in 9 years. It's been a long time. Aman smiled faintly. Too long. Another silence. But this one felt different. Lighter. Not uncomfortable, just honest. Nikhil looked at him. I don't even remember what we were trying to prove. Aman let out a small laugh. Neither do I. They both smiled through tears, and in that moment, 9 years of distance quietly began to melt away. Not because someone won, not because someone lost, but because both of them finally realized that some relationships are simply too valuable to keep score. My dear listeners, I often think about the backpack we imagined at the beginning of today's episode. The one filled with stones, perhaps every regret, every old argument, every apology we have been postponing, is just another stone we have chosen to carry. And maybe it's time to put one of them down, not because the other person deserves it, but because you deserve peace. There is a beautiful English expression, let bygones be bygones. It simply means don't allow the past to steal the future. Easy to say, difficult to do. But sometimes the first step is just one conversation, one phone call, one message, one sentence. Can we talk? You never know. It might become the lightest decision you've made in years. So before you sleep tonight, I would like to leave you with three questions. Is there someone you've been meaning to forgive? Is there someone waiting for your first step? And if life gave you just one more chance, what conversation would you refuse to leave unfinished? Think about it. Because life is too short to carry a backpack full of yesterday. Thank you for spending this evening with me. Take care of your heart, take care of your people, and until we meet again, keep learning, keep growing, and don't forget to put down the weight you were never meant to carry alone. Good night, my dear listeners. I'll see you in the next story.